Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. Today we're breaking down this 11-game slate Tuesday in the NBA. 2 games left in the season, and it's getting very, very wacky. I personally really enjoy this part of the season. I know a ton of people hate it, but I enjoy it. If you're keeping up with the news, you can kind of tell how, at least who's going to be in the starting lineup. Though today, rotations will probably be all over the place when we have entire teams sitting out. Believe it or not, there are a good amount of teams still playing for something today, whether it's playoff positioning or actually getting into the playoffs with 2 games left. So we will have some motivated players, guys going out there that you know will be getting their minutes. And that's very rare, or at least very hard to find at this point in the season. So taking advantage of that is important. Welcome to the channel if this is your first time here. My name is Sal. I cover daily fantasy sports in NFL. Right now, the NBA, it's winding down, but the playoffs, depending on how big the slates are, if we get some 4-game slates, I'll be covering those 3-game slates potentially. And then also MLB, which is right around the corner. We had a video yesterday on it. I'll be breaking down more into the MLB as the time goes on and the NBA playoffs approach. So we'll cover the injury news. There's a ton of people on this list. There's like 60 different updates. I'm going to go through it quick. I just want you guys and girls to have a refresher, or at least understand where the situation is at on the East Coast, 9 a.m. exactly, 8:59 to be exact, and we can go from there. So let's just start with Boston. You can see the entire goddamn team has been ruled out. You have Kyrie, Tatum, Horford, Baines, Marcus Smart, Hayward, and Marcus Morris. So that is 7 guys out of their top 8 players outside of Jaylen Brown and Terry Rozier, pretty much top 9 players that are ruled out. So you're going to get pretty much right now, they have 9 guys who are available today. One of those guys is Daniel Theis, who was questionable. One of them is Robert Williams, who is also a power forward center. And then there's another power forward center on the team. So they only have 6 guys who can play the point guard, shooting guard, and small forward role. That's not a lot, so there's going to be big minutes going around. Jaylen Brown, the obvious guy who will get a bump here. He has let people down in the past. This is a dream matchup for the guards, both in Terry Rozier and Jaylen Brown. $5,200 Rozier makes a lot of sense. Jaylen Brown at $4,800 makes a ton of sense. You get minimum price Robert Williams. You get, I believe, minimum price Semi. I don't even want to try and say his last name, but he should see upwards of 30-plus minutes as a small forward, power forward option. So, yeah, there's a ton of minutes to go around here. I imagine you get Jaylen Brown at the 2, Terry Rozier at the 1, at the 3, at the 4, probably Robert Williams, the 5, Daniel Theis if he does play. And then at the 3, it's just kind of throw it up. I believe you'll get Semi at the 3, but we'll have to see. So Boston's going to be a big piece of the slate. People will be stacking them 3 or 4 players because of the value. Again, this is an 11-game slate with loads of value and actually some big pay-up spots that will be playing today and will be getting their full run. So finding the value makes a lot of sense, but keep in mind there's a ton of ways to go today. There's so much value that to win a tournament, you're probably going to have to score 400 points just because there's so much value out there that it's bound to happen that some of them go off, right? So keep an eye on that. I think the mid-range is also stacked. For Charlotte today, you're going to get Marvin Williams doubtful, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist is out, Cody Zeller remains out, Shelvin Mack is out, no real impact there. But pretty much you can see Frank Kaminsky, now that Marvin Williams is out, they've been giving him more minutes, and Michael Kidd-Gilchrist giving him more minutes overall and more minutes at the 5. Willie Hernan-Gomez has been below 20. He had 3 minutes in the 1 game. Frank's been playing extremely well, has a great matchup against Cleveland, who will be without Tristan Thompson and Kevin Love today. Chicago, same guys are out. Same guys will be useful today. Keep an eye on Jakar Sampson. He's been playing extremely well, getting upwards of 30s in minutes and getting over 30 points in all 3 of those matchups, I believe, all 3 of those games. You're going to get Cleveland, like I said, no Kevin Love, no Tristan Thompson. Nick Stauskas is questionable, and no Matthew Dellavedova. If Nick Stauskas is out, keep an eye on that because it actually is going to bode well for Brandon Knight. We saw him. He's been getting upwards in his minutes, big minutes as of late. There is no Matthew Dellavedova. That's going to be one less guard, even though he's only playing around 10 to 12 minutes in Stauskas. Those are going to get split up, and you're going to get an extra 3 to 4 to 5 for Brandon Knight, who is extremely cheap and remains cheap and somewhat productive depending on the night. Charlotte is a decent matchup for him. And you see, we just scroll, and just bear with me, we'll get through this. Dallas, Luka is probable today, so keep an eye on that. I imagine he's going to play. Maxi Kleber is probable, and all these other guys are still in out there. Only guy, Courtney Lee is questionable, but no real impact there. If Luka plays, I imagine I put him in for 33 minutes. It's a spectacular matchup in Phoenix, who does not play defense and is rolling with a G squad plus Richaun Holmes, potentially Richaun Holmes and Josh Jackson. It's a great spot. They finally got Luka's price up to 9,500, where probably it should be. That's it. Keep an eye on that. He's a fine play today if he is starting with the minutes. For Detroit, Blake Griffin is questionable. Keep an eye on this. Detroit is right now in the 8th seed. But Charlotte's only a game back, and I believe the Heat are only a game back with 2 to play. So this is very interesting. If Blake Griffin is out, you can expect 38 to 40 minutes out of Andre Drummond here against the Memphis team that is going to be throwing up Tyler Zeller against him and Ivan Robb. I like that a lot. So keep an eye on Blake Griffin. If he is out, Andre Drummond gets a big bump for me. Golden State said they're going to rest 4 core players today and 4 core players tomorrow. That was the report. Right now, so far, all that we have is Andre Iguodala is out and Andrew Bogut is out. So those are 4 of their 8. That's what they said, 4 of their 8 core players. So if we factor in that those are the 2 of them, the normal starting 5, that gives you 7. And then I imagine the 8th guy is going to be Kevon Looney. I don't know who the 8th guy is in that rotation. Maybe I'm missing somebody. I know Sean Livingston. I don't think he's a top 8 guy in the rotation, though. So keep an eye on that. There's 2 more guys potentially being rested today. They had Durant out, then they put him in Fantasy Lab, so that must have been a mistake. So keep an eye on that. For Houston, Daniel House is probable. Everybody else is a go in a game that actually matters against OKC today. Houston can grab the 2 seed. They probably want the 2 seed because I believe that would allow them to only have to face the Warriors in the Western Conference Finals. And if they get the 3 seed, they'll have to face them, I think, a round earlier. Rajon Rondo, I have him in yellow because he's doubtful. He's pretty much out. They said he'll only be used in case of emergency. So that's 32 so minutes that are going to be wiped out there. Tyson Chandler is out today. Reggie Bullock is questionable. I don't expect him to play. And Kyle Kuzma is out as well. Let's go to this guy's name because I have no idea who he is. This guy, I have him up. Jeremy, I don't even know. Jeremo Jones. He played 38 minutes in the last game. He is a shooting guard, small forward, so if Reggie Bullock is out, you could expect those numbers to stay up. This was with Caldwell Pope playing a ton of minutes as well, and this was in a competitive game. He was trending upwards 27, 25 minutes, so getting bigger minutes the 2 previous games. Doesn't have the greatest matchup against Portland, but he didn't have the greatest matchup against Utah. He played 38 minutes, averaged pretty much a point per minute, getting 38.5 fantasy points. Right now, he seems to be the chalk that everybody's talking about. Look, there's a ton of cheap options today. I'll have to dig more into him because I literally just looked at him last second. Loads of cheap options today, whether you're looking at Boston, whether you're looking at the Tyler Zellers of the world, just random plays across the board. If he's going to play 38 minutes, then he's probably the best of the cheap options at 3,400. Probably not going to find that many minutes at that price point, except for in these Boston guys that can potentially get there. I'd keep an eye on it. If he's going to be extremely chalky, that's a spot that I'm potentially okay fading, unless we get news that he's starting or something like that. Not the greatest of matchups. I believe Portland still has something to play for unless they completely locked up the 4 seed. So keep an eye on that. He is becoming extremely chalky from what I'm hearing right now, just from other people. So keep an eye on that. Mike Conley is out for Memphis, so is Joakim Noah. So you're going to continue to get this Ivan Robb slash Tyler Zeller combo. Tyler Zeller, I think, played mid-20s in minutes in the last game. He's only $3,100. He is in play against Andre Drummond. It's a little bit scary, but I would imagine they keep Zeller out there more than they keep Ivan Robb. So Robb is somewhat out of play for me right now. Zeller at $3,100 makes a lot of sense for a starting center. Minnesota, Taj Gibson's out and Jared Bayless is questionable. You're going to get bigger minutes out of Tyus Jones, especially if Bayless is out. You're going to get around 30 minutes for Dario Saric. Anthony Davis, it says probable. I have the reason he won't play. He's not going to play. They keep putting him as probable. It's just a joke at this point. He's just trolling the Pelicans before he leaves. Frank Jackson remains out. Stanley Johnson is out. Elf Payton's been playing huge minutes, and this is a decent matchup against Golden State if we get news that either 1 or 2 of Klay Thompson and Steph Curry are out for him. Otherwise, no real interest there. New York, so a lot of things going on in New York here. Quickly get through this. You can see we're almost at the end. Noah Vonleh remains out. Lance Thomas got ruled out, so that's a little bit different. Moutier is out, Trier's out, and Kadeem Allen remain out. So what you're going to get here is Mario Hezonja potentially being the best play on the entire slate. I have him in right now for, I think, 36 minutes. Have him in for right around 1.2 fantasy points per minute. He's just trying to ball. You see him out there. He's actually competing. He's actually pretty fun to watch at this point in the season, which is pretty gross to think about. But he's controlling the offense, even with Dennis Smith Jr. seeing a lot of time and playing alongside with him. He was still the point guard. Dennis Smith didn't take over point guard duties. It was Mario Hezonja. He's driving. He's out there trying to get a triple-double. He has a beautiful matchup against Chicago's G squad today. He might be the best play on the entire slate. I think I have him in for around 42 fantasy points today at his price of like $5,900. Did not come up enough at all. Would not be shocked if he goes triple-double again today. He's averaging like 21, 10, and 7 over the past 3 or 4 games. He's been absolutely fantastic. Outside of that, with Lance Thomas being out and Noah Vonleh remaining out, you're going to get a very good minutes increase and stable minutes for Luke Cornett. Have him in for 35 minutes right now. Would not be shocked if I see 36 to 37 to 38. Mitchell Robinson played big minutes in the 38s in the last game. They just have really nobody else to spell him, especially now Lance Thomas is out, a guy who's getting some starts at the power forward spot. So I do like Luke Cornett a lot. I like Mario Hezonja. You can go to Mitch Rob, although I think the price is tough to get there, at least in the mid-range. This is why the mid-range is loaded, in my opinion, and so is the cheaper range. So it makes sense to try and get up to some of these studs. But I do think that those are some nice plays from New York. From the Chicago side, I already talked about the injuries. Jakar Sampson's the guy I'd look out for. Everybody else is kind of priced up to the point I don't want to touch them now, including him, really. Philadelphia, so keep an eye here. We got JJ Redick and Joel Embiid out news. Jonah Bolden is questionable. This Miami team is pretty good on defense, and they have to win when Philly doesn't have to win. So they're going to be playing a little bit harder, probably, you would imagine. Furkan Korkmaz, butchered that. Hope you're not watching. He's questionable too. If he's in, he's been out for a while. If he's in, you probably get 12 to 15 minutes from him, especially with no JJ Redick. And Jimmy Butler's probable. So you have Tobias, you have Jimmy, you have Ben Simmons, and usually I'm very interested in Ben Simmons here. His price pretty pricey today, or actually it's lower than it's been. It's below 9K for Ben Simmons. Tough matchup against Miami. Like I said, they're playing for something Philly is not. But the thing that stands out to me is that there's a ton of centers on this Philly roster now. I imagine Amir Johnson doesn't see any time. If Jonah Bolden is out, you're going to get time split between Boban and, wait for it, Greg Monroe is out there. Greg Monroe played 15 minutes in the last game, played extremely well and was very efficient. So he comes in as a very cheap $3,400, I believe, potential pivot off of that other guy from the Lakers. Literally, I don't know these guys at this point in the season. But keep an eye on that. This is not a throw Boban in and you think he goes for 25 minutes and 40 fantasy points type of day, even if he draws a start. They're very content trying to get Greg Monroe more minutes here, and Amir Johnson is also floating around. Phoenix, DeAndre Ayton's out, Rashawn Holmes questionable, TJ Warren is out as well. Josh Jackson's the play here, 35 minutes, having projected for around 38, 39 fantasy points. He's still fine at his price point if you want to go there. Rashawn Holmes is out. Give Ray Spalding a bump closer to 30 minutes. I have Ray Spalding in for around 18 minutes right now. Rashawn Holmes around 35 if Rashawn Holmes plays. Mo Harkless is probable, nothing major there. Derek Favors is back. He's probable. Have him in for about 26 minutes, 25 maybe. Kyle Korver, Rubio, and Nito are out, so you're going to continue to get point Donovan Mitchell against a tough Denver team. Denver, again, they should be playing to win today. Surprising they rested a lot of guys in the last game because everything went wrong for them. They lost, and the Rockets absolutely annihilated the Knicks, which you would imagine would have happened. I believe they were playing the Knicks, or Phoenix maybe, yeah. And they scored 27 threes. Jabari Parker questionable and McRae questionable for Washington. Both impactful, actually, if McRae's back. Have him in for mid-20s with Bradley Beal's minutes coming down. Decent play at $3,900. Jabari Parker, $6,500. Don't really want him if he comes back. I don't imagine they bring him back for 2 more games. I don't know why he would want to play, risk anything at this point, especially if there's a good chance that they sign him or somebody re-signs him since he's been so effective since the All-Star break or since the trade deadline. So yeah, that's injury news. Lots to keep an eye on. So yeah, let's go over to the target offense sheet. Hope you followed all of that. So, like I said, there's a lot to keep an eye on today. I'm excited for this slate. Not excited to kind of siphon through the garbage that is going to be at the bottom. Jaylen Brown today, obviously he's been chalk in the past, but he has not been chalk when there was no Jason Tatum and there was no Kyrie Irving. He's not been chalk when there's no Jason Tatum, no Kyrie Irving, no Marcus Morris, no Marcus Smart, no Al Horford, no Gordon Hayward, somebody else that I'm missing in there, Aaron Baines, which doesn't matter as much. He is by far the most talented player on this team right now. Hopefully he gets the minutes. Hopefully he gets the opportunities because he has a beautiful matchup against Washington. If we get a Jaylen Brown 35-minute game here, I'd be shocked if you don't get a Jaylen Brown 35-plus point game, fantasy point per minute guy. With all these guys off the court, I imagine it's around closer to 1.1. If you got 35 minutes out of Jaylen Brown tonight, I'd actually be very surprised if he doesn't touch 40 fantasy points, which at 4,800 is great, and that's why he's going to be super chalky. I don't think there's much downside. I think there's a little bit more downside with Terry Rozier at 5,200, but the same thing holds. If he's going to be playing 34 minutes today, I think I have him in for 32, but could easily see 34 if indeed they only have 2 ball handlers on the team. With him and Wanamaker, it'd be something to watch. So, things to keep an eye on today, and I now have this color-coded by the highest team totals will be darker blue. Might be a little harder to read. I can change that. There's a lot here, right? And I don't really know where to start or how to go over all 11 games because I think it would take a while. So I'm just going to hit on a few that actually matter and maybe things that seem interesting to me. So we can start with the one that's the most obvious, at least in my opinion, OKC and Houston. A lot of these totals weren't out yet. This is only a 226 total. I would expect more since OKC plays so fast. Houston gaining 3 possessions in this game. Big pace-up spot for them. OKC, pace-down spot. They're losing about 2 possessions in this game. None of that really bothers me. OKC, 113.75 implied total. Houston, 112.75. This is a 1.75 game, or 1 point difference pretty much. I'll have to change that in the Vegas chart. So these teams are playing for something. Like I said, Houston can still get the 2 seed. OKC is tied with the 6 seed, which is 3 teams tied for the 6th, 7th, and 8th. They're all in the playoffs, but depending on seeding where you want to be, I'd imagine you want to be higher if possible, especially if you're the 6th seed taking on Denver. If they drop to the 3 seed, that's a great matchup for OKC, in my opinion. So yeah, on a slate where there's so much value, it's going to be a very interesting thing when a lot of people try to get James Harden and Russell Westbrook in their lineups. Since we had a day break, I started playing around with it last night, which I never really do. I'm entering the 333 and a couple of other lineups, but a couple other tournaments, bigger ones, single entry type ones towards the end of the year. I don't really want to play too much cash. So going to James Harden and Russell Westbrook separated by $100 each, trying to get them both in your lineups is more than viable. Keep this in mind, though. They have to have those insane games that they have had in the past. And these guys are competitors. This is going to bring it out of them. James Harden going back to OKC today. OKC playing for something. They're going to be up for this game, no doubt about it. Probably the best just in terms of real basketball game on the slate, and probably the best for fantasy. Now, where else do you go in this game? I would not advise stacking, unless you're going for the overtime, trying to hit on overtime here. I think Jeremy Grant is priced up to a point where I don't want him. Steven Adams, there's way better options, especially when he's only center eligible. $10K for Paul George today. I don't want to pay for that because I think there's way better options in the 8K range and the low 9K range in terms of some guards out there, which we'll get to. So it's really, for me, and you have Clint Capella, you have Chris Paul. I think Chris Paul is fine here today. He has a good spot in terms of the pace up. I think that you have Clint Capella, 7,500, still way too cheap, especially for this matchup in a pace up spot, but I don't want to get there. It's James Harden and Russell Westbrook, in my opinion. If you want to put them both into a lineup, fine. Just keep in mind that if you're putting them both into a lineup, somebody's probably going to win a tournament today with having them both in their lineup. But the way that you do that, they both have to go for 70 plus. They have to combine for around 140 for you. So on average, 70 plus, which is very much in both of their cards. Like the range of outcomes for that in a competitive game where they're both fired up is not hard at all. It's a triple-double for Russ pretty much, or decently scoring triple-double, and James Harden just shooting his decent percentage amount of shots. So it's there. But then you have to keep in mind that you have to have your value hit. So if you're going to go to the chalk value and it doesn't hit, well, then you're not going to win anything, even if those guys go off. You have to have your value hit. So somebody's value is probably going to hit. It just then depends. You have to have both things happen. They both have to give you 70 points each, probably. And nobody else on the slate who's cheaper can go for around a 70 burger, like a Ben Simmons or a Luka or a Kemba, because then the opportunity cost of what you just gave up to get $2,000 more to one of the Russell Westbrook and James Harden in your lineup, and now doesn't matter as much because somebody cheaper went off. Somebody's going to have that guy paired with a Westbrook or Harden, and then they can get up off of the dust, paying from $3,500 now they get to $5,500 and get a better option. So keep an eye on all that. I at first wanted to get James Harden and Russell Westbrook into my lineups, and I think it does make sense. But then after looking at some of the options, I think there's way better options that allow me to do more with my lineup. Again, it's super early. We're going to get a ton more news. But outside of that, this game, nothing really attracts me. You can go Chris Paul, but I'm not really looking to get there. It's those two. Between Harden and Russell Westbrook for me, it is literally a coin flip. My projections have Harden favored by about 3 points. His individual matchup is better. Westbrook's going to get Chris Paul, so not the greatest of matchups. Although Westbrook doesn't really matter for him. He is a robot. Westbrook should be playing more minutes here. Harden, though, hasn't really been playing over 30 minutes, and he's been getting you 50 to 60 points. I imagine in this game that actually matters. He sees closer to 34, 35. I like Harden here. I think he has the bigger ceiling as well in the 80s when Westbrook kind of taps out in the 70s. Unless he's going for 20, 20, and 20. The next game, Charlotte and Cleveland that's who's playing, right? Charlotte, Cleveland, yeah. Charlotte and Cleveland's very interesting to me. So I love Kemba Walker today. It's early, I know. They're playing for something. They're a game out of a playoff spot right behind Detroit. He's going to be balling. He's been playing huge minutes, 41 minutes. He's been getting 50 fantasy points galore. And I believe he's still relatively cheap. Is he only $9,100 right now, Kemba? All right, so I was just talking about Kemba, and I just realized that I had my lineup showing from Draftkings. I don't like doing that because pretty much I know somebody out there that's watching the video will take that exact lineup. It is early in the morning, and there's a 99% chance that lineup changes, but on the off chance, the 1% chance that nothing changes again today, and I like that lineup. I don't really need to be holding hands to a potential finish line with people. So Kemba's price 9,100, way too cheap against Cleveland in a game that actually matters in my opinion. I prefer that to having both of Harden and Westbrook. I'd rather have Kemba in one of them if that's the route that you're trying to go. The Cleveland side, you're going to get Larry Nance 6,600, dirt cheap, way too cheap. Fantastic matchup today against Charlotte. Frank Kaminsky playing the center hurts a little bit more compared to some of these other bums we're having out there like Willie Hernangomez and probably not Bismack. Bismack's actually pretty good on defense. So I think Frank's in play. I think Kemba's in play. And then on the flip side, Larry Nance. That's all I really want here. You can go Cedi Osman to try and get him at 1% owned today, and he can give you his 40 to 45 point ceiling games. I think that's completely fine. But yeah, it's Larry Nance who should see 35 minutes and of the bulk of the rebounding opportunities here. Have him projected for north of 40 fantasy points as of right now. And then Kemba, that's where I really want to go in this spot. Looking at some other spots now, things that stand out, I think Dallas and Phoenix, I already mentioned. Keep an eye on Rashawn Holmes. If he's out, Ray Spalding becomes decent, but not somebody I really care too much for at 4K when there's so many lower options. Phoenix, Josh Jackson, he's fine. I probably don't get to him as much today, even though his price remains 6,700 and fair. I have him projected to exceed that value, but he's at a range, and he's at a range where at 6,700, I'd rather have Larry Nance at 6,600, or I'd rather go down and get some value, or I'd rather go up to the 7K range. Dallas side, it's just Luka for me today. You can try and pick your poison with some of the, will Dirk play 30 minutes because it's his last home game? Maybe they're playing another home game, I don't know. But keep an eye on the news with Luka. I think he's the best play from this team by far, even taking into account price. New York and Chicago, I hit on them. Lots to love from New York. Mario Hezonja, in my opinion, the best player on the slate. He is trying to go out there and ball. He's actually being competitive. You can see him moving around the offense. You can see him driving, trying to get triple doubles. He's way too cheap at 5,900. If he was 6,900, I'd still consider playing him here. Love Mario Hezonja today. Love Luke Cornett today with the news that Lance Thomas is out. Noah Vonleh remains out. There's going to be big minutes for Luke Cornett. He should draw the start. I don't know who else can play power forward today. So yeah, I imagine Hezonja continues to get the start at point guard. If Dennis Smith, for some reason, draws a start at point guard, takes me off Hezonja a little bit. Dennis Smith, though, when he was out there playing alongside Hezonja at the shooting guard position, he was allowing Hezonja to control the offense. So keep an eye on that. What else do we have here? Chicago side, no real interest. Sampson's fine, but I believe Walt Lamont Jr. is too expensive now. Sampson at 6,100 against New York. I do like that. I believe he's 6,100. But again, I'd rather get to Larry Nance at 6,600. Boston and Washington. So Boston's matchup across the board is great against Washington today. I want to see who starts at the 5 today. I'm hoping Daniel Theis is out, so I can just feel confident about Robert Williams going and getting 35 minutes at the 4 and the 5 today. I had them both projected for 27 minutes. That news is going to be impactful in my opinion. I prefer Robert Williams to Daniel Theis. We'll have to see what the starting lineup looks like. Outside of that, everybody's really in play. They have 9 guys potentially playing. If Theis is out, only 8. All of them are in play for minutes today. Obviously, the obvious ones are Terry Rozier at 5,200. He's too cheap. $4,800 Jaylen Brown. He's too cheap. Both these guys can very easily today 8 to 10x for you, and I would not be shocked against a very poor against the guard Washington team. Detroit and Memphis, if Blake Griffin, he is questionable. They need to win, so I imagine he's going to try to play. I have him in right now. If he's out, DeAndre Drummond gets a huge bump here. The Memphis side of the ball, I do enjoy having DeLon Wright today. DeLon Wright, 7,100, is going back-to-back triple doubles, I believe. If you can get to it, I like it. It's a huge pace down spot for him. Not an overall attractive game, but he should be playing. I have him in for 38 minutes today. That's it on those games. If you wanted me to hit on another game, drop it in the comments. I can give you my take, but I just wanted to quickly go through some of them. There's a load of them. You can see here, no early interest for me. I'm not going through these 11 games when there's going to be so much news changing and there's so much value already, and just listing 30 guys, because why not just give my entire player pool at that point? I don't know. It's way too early to be honest. I kind of hinted at where I'm looking. I love Kemba today. Frank Kaminsky's fine. If I just want to go through the games, right? Drummond I like way more if Griffin's out. Memphis, DeLon Wright is fine. You can try and throw out a Tyler Zeller. Washington, no real interests here for me. Boston, obviously all the value that everybody's going to be going to. The Cleveland side, you get Larry Nance. That's really all I want to look at. Cedi Osman, if you are really dying to try and get somebody else from this game, or just somebody who's lower owned who has somewhat of a ceiling. Charlotte, Frank and Kemba. Miami, nothing. No real interest. You can go Goran Dragic. No real interest for me. Philly side of the ball, usually I would like Ben Simmons here, but again, I don't really know what the minutes are going to look like. Tougher matchup. Miami's going to be actually trying to win. You can go Simmons. He's cheap enough. Jimmy Butler as well, but no real interest for me here. Greg Monroe, if he starts, becomes a sneakier play at the $3,400 price point. Chicago, early on, no interest outside of Samson, but very small interest there. New York, Hezonja is probably the best play on the slate right now. Mitchell Robinson's fine. Luke Cornett's very nice as well. New Orleans, Jaleel Okafor played over 30 minutes in the last game. We didn't really hit on this game. Jaleel Okafor looks nice, and if you're going to continue to get 35-plus minutes out of Alfred Payton, he's more than nice. Ian Clark has been playing extremely well, actually driving to the basket and creating offense, scoring 30 points in the last game, 50 DraftKings points. He's only 4,600. I think he's fine. Golden State, Boogie Cousins is too cheap at 6,800 against New Orleans. If he's one of the guys who actually plays and gets 26 to 27 minutes, there's no reason he can't go for 40-plus points today. But again, he's in that range where it's 6,800 for Boogie or 6,600 for Larry Nance for 7 extra minutes guaranteed at a minimum. I'd probably take Larry Nance there, to be completely honest with you. His game does not matter for Golden State, so that's what scares me. Minnesota, no real interest. Tyus Jones should play 35 minutes. Karl-Anthony Towns' minutes have been slowly coming down. Don't really want to pay for it. Toronto, no interest across the board for me. Dallas, Luka, that's about it. Dirk, if you really want to throw a dart. Phoenix, Josh Jackson's a fine play, and Rashawn Holmes is a fine play if he plays. Utah, Derek Favors is back, draws slight interest for me, but no outstanding interest. Donovan Mitchell as a point guard is something that's of interest as well. But again, probably don't get anything there. Denver, if they're all in, I don't want any of it. OKC, Russell Westbrook, and it pretty much stops there. You can throw a little Jeremy Grant in if you want. Houston, Harden by a mile, and then Paul, and then Clint Capella. For the Lakers, you got this random guy. I still don't remember his name. Whatever it is, starts with a J. Jones. He seems like he's going to be chalk. Keep an eye on that. Caruso, don't really want it. That's it really for the Lakers. There's a lot of dust there, and you can get better value elsewhere. Portland, McCollum has only been playing 25 minutes. So Damian Lillard at 9,300 against the Lakers is a dream matchup. Keep an eye on that. If he's in, they have a nice implied team total of 116.75. I do enjoy that quite a bit. And Enes Kanter here today, even if he plays 28 minutes, he has a phenomenal spot, or is in a phenomenal spot. That's it. Those are somewhat things that just pop out as I go through the names. I'm going to edit this video. I'm going to have to take out when I just show the early builds of lineups. But thank you guys. Thank you, girls. Like the video before you leave. My name's Sal. You already know that. Peace out, gang.